Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Limited video we're going to be jumping into the GPU planets, specifically starting things out with Nvidia's Titan XP, because some benchmarks have leaked of the graphics card, which now represents the pinnacle of a single GPU performance you can get in a machine. And then we're going to finish things off with a Gigabyte RX 500 series, because a series of SKUs has popped up onto the internet, so we can at least get a preview of how these particular cards look. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am currently finishing the editing of the Neil Trevor interview from Kronos, and of course he works at Nvidia in his day job. It's over an hour of audio, so it's essentially taking a bit longer to, well, make sure it doesn't look boring. So I want to time things and have relevant images on screen when possible, that type of thing. So in other words, it's going to take a while. I have also rebuilt my own personal Ryzen rig, which now has a graphics card back in. I'm going to be doing a lot of testing on that over the next couple of days. And basically a lot of reviewing is going to happen. In other words, well, we're just really kind of getting swamped. So stick with us. But let's first of all talk about the Titan XP leaks. Well, I'll say leaks. Actually, to be more specific, a user has got their card delivered on Reddit. And this represents, at least as far as I understand, the first score of the Titan XP that's been made publicly available. And then there's 25,035 in Firestrike 1.1. Now, to put that into some level of context, this is essentially the same level of performance that two GTX 1070s would get in SLI. And to put it into further context, and perhaps a comparison against the GTX 1080 Ti, which was just recently the fastest single card you could get, in other words, the XP has dethroned it, it's about, well, 11% faster than a stock 1080 Ti, and a little faster than an overclocked 1080 Ti. Perhaps more telling of all, however, is the clock speed of this particular GPU. It's just a shade under 2000 MHz for the core, 1974. This actually represents a rather hefty increase from the touted boost clock of 1582. Obviously, there is some overclocking going on. As far as I understand, the user has not currently put the card under water cooling. That's a project for the future. So it's still pretty impressive, and there is only one card here. A number of users have commented on previous videos of Titan XP saying that they didn't really like the card. They felt it was a waste of money, that, you know, it just was Nvidia essentially being kind of money grabbing. And I don't really agree with that in a way, but I do in another. I know that might sound quite contrary, and well, it is, but it's like, this is not a card for folks who are either going to have to pay their rent or pay $1,200 for GPU. This is for folks who are very affluent, and they perhaps will buy one or two of these, and they're buying it either for the status symbol, because they just want the very best in performance, or because they need the best in performance. In other words, they run a 4K display, and perhaps they don't want necessarily to have SLI. So, for example, normally, for most individuals, I'd suggest buying two GTX 1080 Ti's, running them in SLI, because obviously you're going to get better performance. However, not all games do run SLI. It's just worth noting that. And if you just want a no fuss, no muss type of solution, then this card is a little bit faster than a single Ti. However, for the vast majority of users who are looking for, let's say, a 1440p or 4K GPU, then undoubtedly the better value proposition is a GTX 1080 Ti, or just, you know, a standard GTX 1080. It's really down to you. Being honest, though, this card is a beast, without a question. I don't really have any problems or qualms about Nvidia releasing it after the Ti, because obviously they wanted a card which is still the Titan lineup. In other words, they wanted a card which Titan represents the pinnacle in gaming performance, and obviously the Ti pretty much dethroned that. But the biggest issue I have is the fact that they didn't release it to members of the press first. The only saving grace I can say, the only thing I can say in their defense, is that it's not particularly difficult to ascertain what the performance level would be roughly around. With the Ti compared to the original Titan, it's a bit more difficult, because obviously you've got additional memory bandwidth there. You've only got 11 gigabytes of RAM as well. The clock speeds are a little bit higher. There are a few other caveats, but with the Titan XP, it's not really that difficult to kind of make some guesses. But it is what it is. You know, I don't really have any issues with the XP's existence, and I think it's kind of cool. The only problem, of course, for users who are thinking about buying it to be the best of the best is we don't know what's happening with Vega. But that doesn't really pertain or really exclude this card for, at least for now, being the best card available. I also want to quickly touch upon the RX 500 series, more specifically some of the Gigabyte GPUs which have popped up onto the internet. Now obviously this is an exclusive from videocards.com, so full credit to them, but I just want to really quickly go over a couple of the SKUs and give my thoughts on it. This is kind of one of those cards that rather launches which isn't exactly the most exciting in the universe, but it's good for the consumer. So Aurorus, from what Gigabyte are telling the press, is going to replace the G1 Gaming. And we have several cards from that series, and essentially they are pretty much what you'd expect. You know, custom level RX 580, so in other words, the cooler that you would normally attribute to an AMD stock cooler is gone. It's, well, stock card rather, it's gone, and it is of course replaced with custom fans and all of the other heat pipes and shiny goodness you'd expect from, you know, an AIB. The big news, at least in my personal opinion, isn't necessarily the performance level of this particular so it isn't particularly this. It's the fact that, of course, these cards are going to be rather interesting for certain individuals. If you've managed to resist the temptation of a 400 series card, and let's say you're running something like a GTX 760, and you want to play the latest games, and it's becoming a choice of like, well, do I want textures, or would I prefer to actually have geometry? Or, you know, do I want lighting, or do I want shadows? Well, I could have both, but then I get 15 frames a second. Well, I am only playing Dragon Age Inquisition at 1440p. I guess I could kind of reduce the pixel quality, and I could maybe just have shadows. That might work, right? If you're kind of in that situation, and we've all been there at some point or another, then something like a 580 or a 570 might just be the ticket for you. The other real benefit, the kind of icing on the proverbial cake here, is that, and I mentioned this in a previous video, the price cuts for the 400 series are starting to really take effect. And as AIBs and retailers clear their back inventory, this is pretty nice for end users, because essentially you can pick up a 480 with either a really steep discount or a game. So that's good, because if you can pick up, say, Doom and 480, then you're pretty much set. So that's definitely something to take into account. Obviously, the 500 series, it's not like it's just a like-for-like replacement. You do have higher clock speeds, but overclocking potential, you know, it looks like 1500 megahertz is not inconceivable by any stretch of the imagination. That's obviously in the core, and that puts out enough performance where I can say, quite frankly, that this card is going to see you through a couple of years minimum, depending obviously on your prerequisites of image quality. Anyway, with all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Thank you as normal for subscribing and, well, you know, supporting us. It's incredibly appreciated. It honestly is. One last thing, if you want to hit me up on social media, you can feel free to do so. You can look at facebook.com/RedGamingTech. Do address it to me, that's Paul, or Amy might be a bit confused. You can also email me directly. There we go, I've got some English available, honest, which is paul@redgamingtech.com, or you can, you know, do it some other method. I'm sucky at the moment on Twitter because I've got so many messages as a backlog, I probably won't get through to you at the moment, because quite frankly, it's getting a bit ridiculous. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.